Usually when I'm digging through the stack for deep dives, I'm looking for the shiny stuff.
The shiny stuff.
Yeah, the drill a breakthrough in AI, a new psychological framework for happiness, something that screams the future is here. But this week, I found myself reading a document that, quite frankly, sounds like the cure for insomnia.
Oh, no. Let me guess.
Yeah.
You fell down a rabbit hole of government PDFs again.
Worse. I found a U.S. Army field manual, specifically FM3-0, and so before you hit stop, let me defend myself. Because once I got past the beige cover and the endless acronyms, I realized I wasn't reading a rule book.
Okay.
I was reading the operating system for modern warfare, and it is terrifyingly complex.
That is actually a perfect description. It really is an operating system. The document we're looking at today, which includes the Commander's Guide to Multi-Domain Operations Logic, it isn't about how to shoot a rifle or drive a tank.
No.
It's a logic puzzle with the highest stakes imaginable. It's about how to organize chaos.
Exactly. And whether you're managing a supply chain, running a tech startup, or you're just fascinated by systems thinking, the way the Army is trying to solve this puzzle is, well, it's incredibly relevant. So today, we are deep diving into the 2022 edition of FM30.
Right. And specifically, the introduction and purpose and scope.
Yeah, we're going to peel back the layers of what they call multi-domain operations, or MDO.
We need to understand what that actually means.
Yeah.
Beyond the buzzword. And we're going to look at the commander's notes to see how leaders are expected to make decisions when literally everything is trying to kill them.
It's a masterclass in high-stakes decision-making. So let's orient everyone. What exactly is this document we're holding? Because it's not the full manual, is it?
No, right. The source material is a commander's guide. So think of it as the Cliff's Notes for generals. FM30 is the doctrine, the Bible of how the Army fights. But this guide, it breaks that massive doctrine down into plain language summaries and daily study notes. It's designed to bridge the gap between abstract theory and the person sitting in the tent trying to plan a campaign.
Which is lucky for us because abstract theory in military speak is usually impenetrable. So let's start with the big picture. What is the headline here? What is FM30 actually for?
In the simplest terms, FM30 is the blueprint for victory. But context is everything. I mean, if you look at Army manuals from 10 or 15 years ago, the focus was often on, stability operations, counterinsurgency.
Winning hearts and minds.
Winning hearts and minds, exactly. This manual, it throws that out the window. It is explicitly focused on large-scale combat operations, or LSCO.
That phrase, large-scale combat operations, it just hits different. It sounds less like peacekeeping and more like, well, World War III.
It's acknowledging a seismic shift in the geopolitical landscape. The text explicitly mentions competition, crisis, and armed conflict against peer adversaries.
Peer adversaries?
Yeah. We are not talking about fighting a militia in the mountains anymore. We are talking about fighting a state actor with tanks, jets, satellites, and cyber capabilities that match our own.
Which changes the target audience entirely. I assume this isn't for the private digging a foxhole.
No, not at all. The source lists the primary audience as the theater army, corps, division, and brigade commanders.
So the top brass.
These are the CEOs and the board of directors of the battlefield. They are moving thousands of troops, managing billions of dollars in assets, and orchestrating logistics across continents.
And there's another acronym in there that caught my eye regarding the future. It said this manual underpins DOTMLPFP development. Now, I promise no acronyms without an explanation, so you have to walk me through that one. It sounds like a bad Scrabble hand.
It is. It's a classic military mouthful.
Yeah.
So DTMLPFP stands for doctrine, organization, training, material, leadership, personnel, facilities, and policy.
Okay, so literally everything.
Everything. The implication here is massive. FM30 isn't just telling commanders how to fight today.
No.
It's dictating what kind of tanks they buy for 2030, how they train lieutenants at West Point, and how they restructure entire divisions. If the logic in this manual is flawed, the Army spends the next decade building the wrong force.
That adds so much weight to this. It's not just a tactical guide, it's an institutional roadmap. And the destination on that map seems to be this concept of multi-domain operations, MDO.
MDO.
We see it on every page. But let's play devil's advocate for a second. War is war, right? You take ground, you shoot the bad guys. Why do we need a fancy new term like multi-domain?
Because the ground isn't the only place you can lose anymore. Traditionally, we think of land, air, and maybe sea. Those are the physical domains. MDO says that's not enough.
Right.
You have to integrate land, air, and maritime, yes, but also space and cyberspace.
Space and cyber, and the source material even mentions the information dimension and the electromagnetic spectrum as if they are physical territories to be conquered.
Exactly. Think about it this way. In 1944, if you controlled the hill, you controlled the fight. Today, you can sit on top of the hill with a battalion of tanks. But if I control the electromagnetic spectrum,
You can jam their radio.
I can jam your radios. You can't talk to your support. If I control cyberspace, I can hack your logistics network so your fuel trucks go to the wrong grid square.
Oh, wow.
And if I control space, I blind your GPS.
So your tanks are sitting on the hill, blind, deaf, and running out of gas.
And then they are just expensive paperweights. That is the essence of multi-domain operations. The manual frames it as integrating all these capabilities to create a converged effect.
A converged effect.
You don't just win on land. You use space and cyber to enable the win on land.
It sounds incredibly difficult to coordinate. I mean, getting different departments in a generic office to talk to each other is hard enough.
Oh, absolutely.
Now you want the hacker, the satellite operator, and the tank commander to synchronize to the second. What's the ultimate goal here? What does the source say is the point of all this complexity?
The source uses a very specific phrase that I think is brilliant: to gain and exploit relative advantages.
Relative advantage. That feels almost humble. It doesn't say total domination or supremacy.
And that's a key insight. The manual is realistic. Against a peer enemy, some with their own satellites and hackers, you can't expect to be superior everywhere all the time. You might only have superiority in the air for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You might only jam their radar for 30 seconds.
So it's about creating these little windows of opportunity.
Precisely. You create a temporary advantage in one domain. Say you hack their air defense network just long enough to fly a bomber through, which destroys a bunker, which allows the tanks to move forward.
It's a cascading chain of events across different layers of reality.
It's like an ecosystem or an orchestra. The percussion section, the artillery is great, but if they aren't listening to the cyber violence, it's just noise.
And in modern war, noise gets you killed.
That's right. The source emphasizes that land forces must integrate with the joint force, the Navy, Air Force, Space Force. If you try to fight a land-only battle, you will lose.
But I want to push back on this a bit, because integration is easy to say in a PowerPoint. How does a human being actually do this? The source material has this section called Commander's Notes, which I found fascinating. It felt less like a textbook and more like a cheat sheet for a very stressful exam.
These notes are where the rubber meets the road. They are designed to bridge that gap between the high-level ecosystem talk and the actual military decision-making process, or MDMP.
Oh, right. And the first thing that jumped out at me was this idea of operational logic. The expert in the source suggests that when a commander is stuck, when the plan isn't coming together, they should pause and ask a specific question.
Right. What does FM30 assume about how we fight this fight?
I love that question.
It's a grounding mechanism. It forces the commander to check their own biases. Are they assuming they'll have air support? Well, FM30 says don't assume that. Are they assuming their GPS will work? FM30 says have a backup plan.
It forces you to align your specific problem with the bigger picture logic. It's metacognition, right? Thinking about how you're thinking.
It's a sanity check, absolutely, and it flows right into mission analysis. The notes were very specific here about understanding your slice of the pie.
Yeah, it said commanders need to identify how their unit contributes land power to the joint campaign.
This is crucial. In the old days, a division commander might just say, my mission is to take City X. And that was it, the end.
Right.
Now, under MDO logic, the mission is, I need to take City X because it houses a fiber optic node that the cyber command needs to access in order to shut down the enemy power grid.
So the objective isn't the hill. The objective is what the hill enables for everybody else.
Exactly. You have to map your specific actions, taking terrain, destroying systems, to the broader multi-domain framework. If you don't know why you're taking the hill in the context of space and cyber, you might be taking the wrong hill.
You might be wasting lives.
You might be wasting lives on an objective that doesn't actually help the joint force win the war.
Which leads right into this next section on breaking the silos, because the source material had a very specific warning about course of action development. It warned against defaulting to single-domain, brigade-centric solutions.
This is the trap, and it's a human trap. A brigade is a massive formation. Thousands of soldiers, tanks, artillery. A brigade commander has a lot of tools in their own backpack.
Of course.
The temptation, psychologically, is to use the tools you can see and touch. I have a tank, I see a target, I shoot it.
It's the law of the instrument. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Right. But FN30 argues that a brigade-centric solution is dangerous in large-scale combat operations. If you only look at your own assets, you are fighting with one hand tied behind your back.
You're missing opportunities.
You might be sending tanks into a meat grinder when a call to the Space Force or a cyber effect could have neutralized the threat without firing a single shot.
So the manual is trying to rewire the commander's brain. Stop being selfish. Stop thinking about your fight.
It's demanding integration. The notes emphasize that a commander's guidance to their subordinates, the people actually executing the orders, must be anchored in this view. A battalion commander needs to know, I am not alone on an island. I am the tip of a spear that includes satellites and server farms.
It changes the psychology of the battlefield. You aren't isolated. You're a node in a network. But, and here's the big but, being a node in a network implies the network is working. And the final section of the notes takes a turn into some pretty dark territory.
It does. This is the reality check.
We talked about large-scale combat operations earlier, but the notes section brings up the concept of stress testing. And the language here isn't about fancy tech. It's about tempo, attrition, and sustainment.
Attrition is the polite military word for catastrophic loss.
Right.
The manual is brutally honest here. It assumes that in a fight with a peer adversary, the U.S. Army is going to lose people and equipment at a rate we haven't seen since Korea or World War II.
That's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
We've spent 20 years watching drone feeds where the operator is safe in Nevada. This manual says, no, you will be hit, you will bleed.
And more importantly for the commander, your systems will break. The source mentions designing schemes of maneuver that can endure high-intensity, contested environment.
Contested environment, that's the key phrase.
It means nothing is safe. Your supply lines,
Contested.
they might get bombed. Your communications, contested. They might get jammed. Your rear area where you sleep, contested. The manual tells commanders to stress test assumptions.
So stress testing isn't just, can we make it there on time? It's, what happens if our fuel convoy gets vaporized? What happens if we lose 30% of our armored vehicles in the first hour? Does the plan still work?
Exactly. It forces commanders to build robustness. You can't have a delicate plan that requires everything to go right.
Because it won't.
Because an MDO against a peer enemy, things will go wrong. Sustainment keeping the Army fed, fueled, and armed becomes the nightmare scenario. If you can't sustain the fight, all those fancy cyber assets don't matter.
It's interesting how we've come full circle. We started with this high-tech vision of space lasers and hacking, and we ended up right back in the mud with logistics and attrition.
That's the brilliance and the horror of FM30. It integrates the future with the eternal, brutal realities of war. It doesn't pretend that technology eliminates the hardship.
No.
It says that to survive the hardship, you must master the technology. You have to use the satellite to save the supply truck.
It's also about tempo, isn't it?
Yeah.
The source mentioned that. We aren't just surviving, we have to move faster than the enemy.
Right, and tempo in this manual doesn't just mean driving fast. It means decision speed. If you can integrate your cyber, space, and land attacks faster than the enemy can react, you create chaos in their ranks. You force them to make mistakes. But maintaining that tempo while your supply lines are being bombed, it requires a level of logistical genius that is hard to overstate.
It's a lot to process. We went from a dusty PDF to realizing we're looking at a guide for one of the most complex management challenges on Earth.
We saw that it's written for the highest levels, corps, and divisions to guide how they build the future army.
We unpacked multi-domain operations MDO and realized it's about relative advantage, not total dominance. It's about being an ecosystem.
And we looked at the commander's notes, seeing how leaders have to break out of their silos, stop thinking in terms of just their brigade,
Right.
and start stress testing their plans against the harsh reality of a contested environment where things will break and people will die.
The expert in our source really hammered home one point. Knowledge is most valuable when applied. This isn't for reading in an armchair.
No, it's for shaping how leaders think when the pressure is unbearable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you read the manual but don't change your decision-making process, if you don't ask that what does FM30 assume question, then you haven't actually learned anything. The doctrine has to live in the mind of the commander, not just on the bookshelf.
And that brings me to a final thought I've been mulling over. We've talked about the sheer scale of this. You have to master the terrain, the hills, the rivers. But now, according to this manual, you also have to master the cyber domain, the electromagnetic spectrum, space assets, and information warfare.
It is an immense portfolio for any single human brain.
So here is the question. Has the cognitive burden of leadership become the ultimate bottleneck in modern warfare? We can build faster jets, smarter missiles, better AI, but can a general, even a brilliant one, actually process all 5 domains in real time without freezing up? Or are we building a system that is too complex for humans to run?
That is the defining question of our time. And perhaps that is why the manual emphasizes the staff and the shared understanding so much. Because the era of the singular heroic leader who knows it all might be over. No one person can hold it all anymore. It's not just about the general. It's about the collective intelligence of the entire command post.
Something to think about the next time you feel overwhelmed by your own Outlook calendar. At least you don't have to coordinate a satellite launch while managing a tank battle in the mud.
Small mercies.
Thanks for diving in with us today.
A pleasure as always.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive. Stay curious.